truth, know your worth, set her free. Thank you. I am the rebel poet, I rant and I know it, no filter, just say it. Reclaim these streets for the 97% of women who've been sexually harassed. Reclaim our streets for the 1 in 3 women who've been sexually assaulted. Kill the patriarchy instead of 3 women a week being murdered by a partner or ex. I'm here in solidarity, understanding and empathy. I'm a survivor of domestic and sexual violence and police brutality. First, let's talk facts. Hold on a minute, I can't help myself. Maybe one controversial point first, because yes, rest in peace, Sarah Everard. My heart goes out to her family and friends, but if she wasn't a middle-class white woman allegedly killed by a copper, would there have been this much uproar? My guess is no. At least Sarah's death gave women a platform. Yet, we're still dealing with not all men and victim blaming and shaming. We know not all men, but enough that women live in fear. Do you have to make it about yourself, defending yourself and good men, instead of listening to the centuries-old plight of women and understanding you diminish the problem, making it about not all men, when it's 90%, 97% of women who've been sexually harassed? I digress. It's kind of my thing. I go off on tangents, but it's all relevant, so stay with me. Where were we? Oh yes, facts. In 2018, the Crown Prosecution Service urged prosecutors to ditch weaker rape cases. Even though less than a third of men end up with convictions against them, and the total reported rapes had more than doubled since 2014. Which leads me to 2019, where rape prosecutions in Wales and England were at their lowest in a decade. Charges down by 38%. Prosecutions down by 32%, with convictions falling by 26%. It's been said rape appears to be becoming decriminalised. Even the most senior police officer for rape had concerns over the risk-averse CPS, noting it would be the most vulnerable who would be most affected. Nearly 1,500 accusations of sexual misconduct and harassment against police officers between 2012 and 2017, with only 371 cases being upheld. And let's be real, these crimes are already massively underreported against members of the public, never mind when the perpetrator is in a position of power, using it to abuse, scare and coerce. Onto the Metropolitan Police. Again, in 2019, it was reported that only 1 in 18 members of the Met accused of sexual assault are subject to formal action. Between 2012 and 2018, a total of 562 officers were accused of sexual assault. Only 43 faced subsequent proceedings, but the vast majority, 420 cases, faced no action. sexual assault was 65% up since 2012. With reports of sexual misconduct and gender-based discrimination, complaints were 3 times higher. And now to the present day, where the Met attacked women after dark at a peaceful vigil on Clapham Common. No arrest on Kate Middleton for attending the same event. Duchesses don't have to deal with arrest for paying their respects. Can't say the same for the rest of you plebs. Last week, headlines read, revealed the grim list of sex abuse claims against the Metropolitan Police. But what isn't disclosed is how many cases enter the criminal justice system. And an even bigger concern, nearly a fifth of officers on the barred list who've been dismissed from a force and banned from joining all others were dismissed because of abuse of position for sexual purposes, domestic violence or harassment against the public or colleagues. Nearly a quarter of barred officers served the Met. So, Cressida is a dick. How are we supposed to feel safe when your officers are perpetrating these crimes? Wayne Couzens wasn't investigated properly after flashing in a McDonald's a few days before he allegedly killed Sarah. Then, officers shared inappropriate memes about police abusing their power to abduct women. A West Midlands police officer used techniques taught in training to attack a terrified woman, threw her to the ground in the dark, put her in a headlock whilst off duty and walked free from court. A Scotland Yard detective accused of running a prostitute ring also walked free because the judge feared the case exposed police crime. And now, on to Nottinghamshire Police. I don't have any facts or figures. I need to do a Freedom of Information request. I'd be really interested to know the numbers on sexual misconduct hearings and conviction of Nottinghamshire's officers. But what I do have is an opinion and things that I allege. I must say this for legal purposes. Forgive me, but my ethos is a cab. And if you don't know what I mean by that, I'll try and keep the explanation PC. No, not police constable, and never be that much of a class traitor. More politically correct, even though the political figurehead used in my analogy isn't very PC himself. But all coppers are Boris's. And yes, by that, I do mean the old-fashioned term for born out of wedlock. If the police are public servants and not dictators or tyrants, then why are no police forces striking or boycotting the new bill? My personal experience with Nottinghamshire Police, those of friends and women that come to me for help and advice, is that Nottinghamshire Police don't take reports of domestic and sexual violence, stalking or harassment that seriously. There's a problem with institutional misogyny, with victim blaming and shaming running very deep, both societally and institutionally. I'm sick of hearing about abusers bailed with conditions in place, but when they breach these conditions, a women report is not taken seriously. These reports are often ignored or dealt with months down the line, leaving victims with constant harassment and feeling for their lives. Cases dropped due to lack of evidence when it was the police that left the evidence behind. Back to 2019. I managed to get a face-to-face meeting with Nottinghamshire's police executive to address some complaints and how domestic and sexual violence is dealt with. Using relevant cases, I sat and explained everything. Why and how the police failed victims, what leads to not reporting or dropping out of cases. And his response, after all my experience and evidence, was some women just don't want to report. Yes, for all the reasons I just gave, I think I did a visible eye roll. I emailed him at the beginning of lockdown to express my concerns for already rising domestic violence reports. He told me my statistics were wrong and nothing to do with Nottingham, like